listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week on the Bearded Theologians, we kind of figured out that since Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we were kind of looking at some of his writings this morning and came across this great line that we want to share with you, and then we'll reflect upon it. And so the line is from his sermon on the drum major's instinct, and the quote goes like this: "And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving the great definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great, because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant." So, Zach, as we think about Martin Luther King Jr. and the influence that he's had on American Christianity, and even still after his death, and we think about the greatness that he did, what are some things that kind of come up for you as you think about him and the quote that we read for you and all that stuff?
I mean, there's just so much in what we believe and how we act, especially as Methodist. I mean, social justice movements and standing up for human rights and for people in this love that Dr. King talks about is huge. I mean, it's hard to articulate just what really he means to just people, much less the church or anything else, because he stood up in a time and spoke out in the face of hate, which is huge for anybody and for any time, and such an example for all of us today, in a day and age where hate is still unbelievably present in our day-to-day lives. And so this quote just really hits me in that place of, and we put ourselves in a box of, well, I can't do that because of this. I can't serve because I don't have this qualification. I can't preach or teach because I don't have the education formally. I can't go out and help with that project because I don't know how. Well, you may not have the formal education. You may not know exactly what that's about, but you can go serve. That the ending of that, you only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. That's it. We spend too much time saying, well, I can't do it because of this. I can't go and help the homeless because of this. I can't stand up and speak out against hate because of this. No, you can. When our hearts are full of grace and love, that's what we're called to be. And that's how we stand up against the injustices of this world. And Martin Luther King Jr. does that for us. He gives us that example of all of these I can'ts. I shouldn't do this. I can't go do this because of this reason. He broke all that down and said, no, you can and you should, because your hearts are full of love and grace. And I think that's important for us to remember, not only as we come up and celebrate and remember his life, but as we move in to the next days and carry on in our ministries and our just personal lives.
See, I went to Phillips, and we spent a lot of time with Martin Luther King in a lot of our classes, and I just have always been attracted to what he's brought to the table. And when people always ask me the question, have we had modern day prophets? And I always kind of point to him, because I mean, he really was a prophet in a lot of ways, and he died a prophet's death. I mean, yeah, and I think about this quote that I read for you, and I think far too often we try to qualify ourselves to serve or not to serve, and the real issue is, are you doing it? And if you want to make a difference in this world, you don't have to have X, Y, and Z qualifications, you can make a difference regardless of that. And, you can be that servant. And I always think a servant, to me, servant is someone who's willing to serve no matter what the cost is, and really is a slave to the craft. And because when you look at if you look at the word servant, it actually, when you like break it down and you look at the biblical understanding of servant, you'll see it really means slave.
Right.
And I think that there is a point where a servant is really a slave. And I know that's not necessarily the best of language to use on that and that reflection, but we really do, when we serve, we give ourselves and we don't count the costs and all that. I mean, it's just, and so I think when he's talking about, he's really talking about everybody just stepping up and rising up and not letting people hold you back or hold you down because of where you're at.
This reminds me of just being the servant. Jesus gives us a bunch of examples, but two that stick out. He says, count the cost. You count the cost of following me, because it's going to cost your life. That's what it's going to cost. But he also gives us this example when he sits down and he washes the disciples' feet. This is what a servant looks like. It's the master becoming the servant and saying, no, this is it. This is what love looks like. And when Peter's like, whoa, no, you're not going to wash my feet. I'm going to wash yours. No, to follow me, this is what has to happen. And that's it. It's the qualifications of Jesus weren't the servant. It was the master. It's the king. And yet here it is. I'm going to serve you. And so how do we begin to do that and look at our lives and say, where are we called to be the servant, and where have we said, no, I can't do that because of this? We've made an excuse, or we've seen ourselves as less qualified or not qualified in a way that we're truly being called to serve, and we're either scared or reluctant, or we've counted the cost and we're not sure it's worth it. Because we know it's going to hurt.
And yeah, I think that's a good way to reflect and think about, especially as, hopefully you go to a service honoring King and the work that he's done. Those are powerful. I went last year. I took the girls last year to Tulsa, and we had a great experience, and it was a good conversation for the girls to learn about him. Because he does live an example that I think is good for all of us to follow. And I encourage you to read some of his sermons. He's got some really good sermons.
Yeah.
Not just his I Have a Dream speech. He's more than that speech.
Absolutely.
And I think that sometimes people only know him for that speech, when he's got some other ones that are just phenomenal. And so we want to encourage you that as you're taking that day of Monday off, make it a day of service. Make it a day where you're willing to serve your community and empower it and make it better. I think if we do that, we're living into the promised land that he so spoke of trying to make this world a better place. And
right.
That's really what we're called to do, is to make this world a better place. And so we encourage you to do that. And so we thank you for you, and we want to encourage you to look on our site. We've got some really cool things coming down. Looking forward to doing some things in February with each other and with ILIF, and doing some really cool things. Excited about that. And we're thankful for you. Just encourage you to go on Apple or Google Play and give us some stars and give us a review. That only helps get our name out there a little bit more.
Even if you give us a bad review, give us 5 stars, because at least people will see that.
But go on our website, buy some gear. We've got some really great gear up there and all that good stuff. And so we thank you for you. So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media. And we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.